what tends to surprise people about limitations of artificial intelligence, specifically in the realm of engineering judgment?
There's two different categories at least. There's criterial judgment, like, is this the right question and does the answer feel right? And then there's orchestrational judgment of, I know what I need to do, but I have all these tools and I'm not sure which order to call them in. And I know these inputs shuttle from this to that. It's like known work that just needs to be orchestrated. AI is really good at that, orchestrating things. If you go to ChatGPT and ask a question and it needs to go to the web and it needs to find a website and then return the answer, that's orchestrational work. What it's bad at is criteria work.
AI can draft designs, analyze data, and automate workflows. But when it comes to engineering judgment, it still falls short in ways that often catch firms and their engineers off guard. The real challenge is not what AI can do, but rather understanding where it should not be relied on and how that impacts decisions, risk, and project outcomes. In this episode, I am thrilled to be joined by Dustin Schafer, PE and Head of Research at Henderson Engineers. Dustin brings over 25 years of experience in the building systems industry and now focuses on translating emerging technology into real-world strategy. We'll speak about how to define true technology strategy just beyond adopting tools, what AI is actually changing in day-to-day work, and how firms can bridge the gap between what technology promises and what teams really need. If you are trying to make smarter decisions about AI, avoid costly missteps, and build a more intentional approach to technology in your firm, this episode will give you a clear path forward. But before we jump in, I wanted to tell you about AEC PM Connect, a series of in-person events we've created at AMI for AEC project managers and the leaders who develop them. If you want to stay on top of PM trends, elevate your team, and deliver stronger project results, these full-day events are built for you. We're coming to New Jersey this June and Kansas City this October. Learn more and register at aecpmconnect.com, and I hope to see you there in person. With that, let's jump into today's episode. It's now time for our conversation of the week with Dustin Schafer. Dustin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us, and welcome.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So I know we got to chat a little bit offline on a variety of topics, which we'll share some with the audience today, and I'm really excited to dive in. So we'll get started here. So Dustin, can you just tell the audience a little bit about yourself, where you are in your career, and what your current focus is?
Yeah, interesting career path. So I like to tell people you don't have to be super intentional about what you're doing to end up in an okay spot. I'm an architectural engineering degree, licensed mechanical engineer, and then through my career I worked more and more into technology, eventually being the CTO of Henderson Engineers. CTO, I owned all the IT group, all the software, all the data, and innovation. And it made way more sense for us as a firm to split those up into 3 separate groups, get people who are experts at each of those things. And now I've moved into a research role. I'm also getting older. So the research role sounded good. Having less direct reports sounded good. So it's been a good career progression for me. But like I said, it's not like I can say every step was scripted to lead to the next one. It's just kind of a progression from subject matter worker, subject matter expert into IT and then technology.
And I think, one common thing I run across just because of my background is like the difference between like a chief technology officer, a chief information, chief innovation, right? Like we can go down the list, right? Could you just talk about your experience and like why those roles are different and why you needed an expert slotted in each one?
Yeah. So as each one of those things develop, it becomes more and more specialized, but the smaller your firm is, the more general it is. So what I would say is the overlap is technology applied to business strategy. And then as you get into, when we need this specific piece of software, then that becomes expertise around software product management and building and rollout and maintenance. And that's a different thing. That's not business strategy anymore. That's software strategy, and that you need a software expert to do that. Same thing, IT functions in a support role for a lot of companies. It's like the basics of IT is to keep the lights on, utility. As you move that more and more into strategy, it's more of a key part of the strategy, and you need expertise around like, how does this VDI platform work with the goals we have for Revit and the software we're building, and it just becomes more and more specialized. What happens if you leave a generalist in charge is you can't pick up the efficiencies that you gain from having specialists in place. But if you start with a specialist, you can't pick up the strategy that you get from having the generalists there. So it's just kind of a natural progression as you grow and you have kind of a vision set out and a plan in place, then you can start to specialize and get that expertise to leverage to grow each pillar on its own. But generalists have their place. I always call myself a generalist. I don't pretend to be a specialist, maybe in anything except for mechanical engineering. But they have their place. It's a good way to start, and then you need a team once you get to a certain size.
Well, and if you've heard of the concept of skill stacking.
Yeah.
So I would consider you, right, like we were talking earlier, right, like the expert, and maybe you're not like the top 0.001% in any one thing, but the fact that you have, right, MEP, subject matter expertise, and the other things in your background, right, like the skill stacking is what makes you the expert.
Yeah, that's true. If you start to put enough circles on the Venn diagram, like there's a pretty small number of people that are in all the overlaps of those things. I probably fit in that category.
And this is a good segue into the next question, because the question is about, technology strategy, but you can feel free to go down like a different path. But defining technology strategy in an AEC firm today, how is that different than just simple adoption of here's a tool, go use it?
Yeah, so it always starts with outcomes for clients, right? So you start any business and you're like, I'm trying to achieve this outcome for this client. And before technology was as integral as it is in most businesses, it was, okay, I have this outcome. What technology allows me to do that thing at all, right? Like I need Microsoft and I need these things. I need the utility aspect of it on. Then as technology becomes more and more differentiated and there's all these advanced tools that come out, you can do different things. You can provide different outcomes for your client than you would have been able to provide without the technology. So it's not a matter of like, how do I do this thing I've been doing using technology? The question becomes like, how does technology enable me to do different things for my clients than I could do without it? And at that point, it flips to a business strategy, not a IT support strategy. And then you have to say, oh, well, if this is possible, then how does my business strategy change? How do I monetize that? What are the revenue streams? What margins could I expect with these things? If I do two of them, can I make more money or do better outcomes than if I did one independently of these overlaps? So it just becomes fundamentally different, and you change your business product because the technology exists. It's not just a thing you use to do what you've been doing.
What's your opinion on, like, what I see a lot is like, so whether it's innovation or technology or artificial intelligence, it almost just becomes by default. Like, here you go, IT, do something with it.
Yeah. So that's, I'm a believer, like a strong IT organization is just foundational for running a business, and you have to have them as a business strategy partner. I also think it makes sense to separate the business applications of software and technology from the IT team itself. And that's a little bit of a nuanced view. It probably is an irritating view for some CIOs. But I think there's so much pressure for deployment and maintenance and training on an IT organization that if you also add in application and driving business use with it, that takes a backseat to the maintenance and training and deployment and security. It just does. So however many people you put into that group, they get absorbed into those other things and they don't push it into the business. They don't say, well, we could do this. What about this? How does this affect the client? I like to separate that out.
Which makes a lot of sense because, like you said, right, you go into business to serve clients and make money. And that IT team, rightfully so, is focused on doing the things that allow your people to serve your clients and make the company money.
Yeah. And I mean, it can certainly be done within the group, but what that means is they segment it off inside the IT org to a group focused on business applications and business support. And so it's still a little separate. It might roll up to a CIO, but separating it out from your deployment team for sure as a requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then, a related question, because right, AI is all anybody wants to talk about today, which that includes me.
Yeah.
So AI specifically in AEC, like from your seat, which is unique because you're great head of research, what are the most meaningful changes you're seeing in how engineers and project teams actually work? And I don't mean like not the LinkedIn guru version, but like you're an expert in mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
So like you have the background, then you have this unique seat of being the head of research. So you're seeing it firsthand. What are you seeing?
So AI means lots of things. So I would say there's kind of vanilla AI that we've been working on for a while, and I just generally call that optimization. What that allows you to do that you couldn't do just with Excel, say, is to not focus on the output. You focus on what set of inputs gives me the optimum output. So you can kind of run the Excel backwards in a way that you can't do as an engineer. Like say you were doing pressure loss calc for ductwork. You put in the duct size and it tells you the pressure loss. If you're using AI, you can put in the allowable pressure loss and it'll tell you this is the optimum configuration of duct, or you can work backwards. So that's kind of like basic vanilla AI. You should do that. That is not agents. That's just optimization.
And can you and then speak to, because I get this one a lot where, so for example, or like the old like hey chat, what's 2 + 2 = 5?
Yeah.
Like, can you just speak to like why that is versus saying, hey, like please use Python to actually run the computation?
Yeah, so that's an really interesting thing. So if you have optimization, then you have LLMs, large language models. That's just a text predictor, right? Next word predictor. That doesn't do math. It doesn't get on the web. It doesn't do any of those things. Those are tool calls that they've used an LLM to orchestrate. So what you have to do as a CTO or anybody in charge of applying technology to your work is you have to say, what tools do we use and how are we going to call those tools with humans or with agents to do deterministic calculations. So what an LLM does is predict a word. You don't want to ask it to predict a number. You want to call a tool, put the right inputs in and get the right answer back. So you have to segment those things out. And that's why I tell everybody, like even now, if you use Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot, those are agents. They're orchestrating tool calls behind the scenes. If you ask a math question, it's like, oh, this is a math question. I should call the math tools and do math. I'm not going to just try to guess.
Which wasn't always the case.
No, it's still not always the case. It's mostly the case. They're getting better, but they'll still occasionally, they're like, oh, yeah, that was a lot like your last question, so I just said 5. That's the last time you asked me, it was 5.
And then the thing that like I take for granted for certain is like, so if I'm like, I'm on the $200 a month plan or I'm doing a, like we're at like the, I don't want to say bleeding edge, right? But we're a little more sophisticated. But if you're the average user using a free model, you had no control over what it's doing and you just get some output that is not great. Like that's going to affect like the user experience.
Yeah, 100%. And it's really hard to tell the difference. I mean, if you ask 2 + 2, it's not hard to tell the difference. But if you ask, like, do my taxes, it's something that you can't tell if it's right. It's a number. It looks right. So for the average user, the confidence and the tuning of the models to give you the answer in a way that sounds right to you specifically is kind of overwhelming. And so they just seem more accurate than they are. But if you just keep in your head, these need to call tools, I need to know what tools they're calling, that cleans up a lot of that. Because if you can't see the tool call chain, you really should kind of doubt the answer.
Then on that note, Dustin, can you speak to like the probabilistic nature? And I'll give an example. So in one of your Substack articles, I use this analogy all the time now. If you go to ask your state senator about your business plan, and so do 9 other of your buddies, right?
Yeah.
What's he going to say?
Yeah, it's going to sound like a great answer because they're good at sounding like they know what they're talking about. They have no idea about your business.
So these LLMs are kind of like my state senators.
Yeah. And they're tuned to give you an answer that you like. So if you're wearing like a seed company hat, they're going to talk about how great farming is, and it's the backbone of America, and like they pick up on clues about you, and they'll answer the question in a way that you like. That's what LLMs do.
Is there any like just for the audience, right? If a layperson's listening, it's like, okay, how can I like combat that like yes man mentality?
Yeah. So just after you get an answer, say, what about this answer did you tailor specifically to me? And it'll just tell you. Oh, the last 2 paragraphs I did because I know you don't like to get bad news, or, whatever.
And I think there was one point I got so fed up with like the sycophantic attitude.
Yeah.
And I literally looked it up, like, hey, just put into the memory, you're my thought partner and you need to be critical, but not kind of blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And the cool part, at least for me, is nobody's ever going to be perfect because there's so many ways to use the tool, but you can certainly, I don't know, let's say increase the odds of getting a better answer for your specific situation, maybe.
Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm an administrator on our small but growing enterprise cloud account, and so testing things all the time. And so I just built a skill. It was like, you have to answer questions like this, and I put all those things into a skill that I deployed to the whole board. So it helps a little, I think.
And can you speak to that? Because I think most people are used to having like, hey, personal account, personal terms, just me. And then we'll just stick on Claude, right? There's a Teams option. There's an enterprise option. Can you speak from the seat of someone at a larger organization, the differences between one-off accounts and now I have to manage an entire enterprise?
Yeah. It's extremely different. So usually the one-off accounts, the personal accounts, especially if they're not paid for, just you cannot use for business use because there's so much data leakage and the terms are awful and they won't comply with the contracts you're signing with your clients. It's like unacceptable. But if you don't have an enterprise option available, most people will use private subscriptions or just free accounts to do their work, and then that's a bad situation. So the first thing is you have to have something inside your enterprise environment that's not just leaking all your client data out into the ether, right? Letting the models train off of your data. That's the first thing. Second thing is once you have an enterprise account, you need to tell people they have to segment their use off of like personal things go to personal accounts, business things go to business accounts. Because once you have an enterprise account, now you have a discoverable thing. If you're working on a project in there and there's a claim on the project, then all of their chats and all of the memory and everything could become discoverable. It's a whole different thing. You have to manage it as like a corporate asset. Next thing, when you have a corporate account, you usually have single sign-on or an SSO, which is a way to tie someone's sign-on to their corporate login, usually their email. And so that means they can only sign into that account if they're an employee of your company. If you have everybody using personal accounts and they're doing work and then they leave, all that work goes with them and they have the ability to sign on, do whatever they want to do with that chunk of your business asset later. You haven't segmented that all off. So you're just doing this slow progression, getting people more into your environment, more permanent, more sticky, like the IP they're creating stays with your environment. And you're managing the risk in a way that treats it like a corporate asset, not just like a friend that they're asking questions of. Also, you can do things at an enterprise level, controlling individual accounts that you can't do when they're all individual. Like I just talked about that skill. We also could turn off co-work at the corporate level. So people can't use Claude co-work to do things on their local machine if they're using the SSO version or enterprise version of Claude, because we shut that off because it's a right now unmanaged security risk for us if everybody is using co-work because it has too much access to your local machine. Can't do that.
And right, I assume if you had a select few, let's call it the brain trust, maybe you could get comfortable with them. But
yeah,
because I think that the individual, and I've learned this over time, like your individual perception, especially if you're someone who's like relatively capable with these tools and safe, that's like one end of the spectrum. You may not know what the other end of the spectrum, what type of damage they could be doing.
But yeah, it could be significant. Like data leakage is the least of your problems. I mean, honestly, the biggest problem is just slop that people create and pump into your system. Like one example is, I think if we don't have an enterprise tool to use LLMs to do employee reviews or goals, we might as well stop doing employee reviews and goals, because everyone will just create slop and put it into the system because no one likes doing reviews or setting goals. But if you have an enterprise tool, it can coach people into things that are more meaningful, and you can set up a structure around it and like force it into some kind of usable output. I mean, it's like a very minor example, but completely happening everywhere. No one's doing goals anymore. They're just using ChatGPT.
Well, and I gave a presentation the other day, and a gentleman said, well, I can tell when AI has written something. And back to, right, I think you did a really nice job of outlining this. So think of a bell curve, right?
Yeah.
The senator's right at the middle.
Yeah.
And the senator always sounds the same no matter which model you go to. Because if you, it's right, garbage in, garbage out, just like we were taught in engineering school. If you don't, and like Claude, right, you can build a voice profile, get it to sound like you 70% of the time.
Yeah.
Way better than M dashes and the double whatever, parallel negatives, and all of the tells when people say, oh, that was written by AI. Well, that's why.
Yeah. The reason I pick on goals and reviews is because no one is going to scrutinize, because the manager didn't want to do it either. That's just the whole system's just going to convert over to slop.
Well, and that's the thing. And it's a great example because everyone in the organization is affected by it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's well known,
mm-hmm.
and I would say largely, it is text-based. So the LLMs are good at generating plausible sounding stuff for the review.
I mean, if you report to the CEO, they're probably checking your goals. They're probably doing a valid review. If you go down 3 levels or 4 levels in a big organization, that was borderline human slop anyway, right? Like the people were going through the motions.
Well, and even before, right? If you have so many direct reports and only so many hours in a day with everything else you have to do. Well,
so now apply that to everything. As LLMs get engaged in each aspect of work, if you don't have a corporate way to do it, what you end up with is a slop version that somebody did in their personal account pushed into your work, and you're taking responsibility for that. If you have any kind of service organization, you're getting paid to take risk on the accuracy of the work you're doing. And if that just starts to migrate over to AI, uncontrolled AI tools, it's not good.
Speaking of risk, and we'll go to engineering here. What tends to surprise people about limitations of artificial intelligence, specifically in the realm of engineering judgment?
So it's all lumped in. Judgment is lumped into one thing. And I've written about this on Substack, but there's 2 different categories at least. There's what's called criterial judgment, like, is this the right question and does the answer feel right? And then there's orchestrational judgment of, I know what I need to do, but I have all these tools and I'm not sure which order to call them in. And I know these inputs shuttle from this to that. It's like known work that just needs to be orchestrated. AI is really good at that, orchestrating things. If you go to ChatGPT and ask a question and it needs to go to the web and it needs to find a website and then return the answer, that's orchestrational work. What it's bad at is criteria work. So is this a good question? Or is this answer plausible? It's not great at that if the answer is not provably correct. So what it does is return the average, and you get the senator response. Not to pick on politicians, but it's easy to do.
Well, and think about how that mirrors like any big organization's organizational chart.
Yeah.
So like the worker bees, that's like the orchestration layer in human terms.
Yeah.
But the hard stuff and the strategy and why the people at the top get paid so much, well, there's no definite answer to like anything that they're doing.
Transform your technical experts into impactful leaders with EMI's Engineering Leadership Accelerator. Tailored for AEC professionals, this program enhances communication, delegation, and decision-making skills. Flexible, interactive, and designed to fit your team's schedule. Elevate your team's leadership capabilities today. Visit engineeringmanagementinstitute.org and click on corporate training.
Yeah, like what does this client want? is this answer going to be acceptable to them? What should we change about the way we present this because of the certain person we're presenting it to? Those are all criterial things.
It's like you're trying to find deterministic answers for like irrational beings. Because we're human.
Yeah.
Like that's it. Like I don't know. It's like you wake up one day, you're feeling way A, and then tomorrow it's way B.
Yeah. So I have this, one of my articles has this matrix in it that you have to split the problems into this. Is this a closed problem where there's a provably correct answer, or an open problem where there isn't? And is the workflow defined or not defined? And then once you have the little 2x2 matrix, you can find the one quadrant where agents work really well, find the quadrant where you just automate the things. If it's a closed problem and you know the workflow, just write software to do it. I don't need an agent.
Or I just have the agent help you write the software.
Yeah,
maybe.
That confuses people too, is that some of the things we're talking about doing become their own tasks, which then you would have to say, is an agent good at this task or not? And then once it's done, it's just software. It's not an agent anymore.
And then talk to us about the quadrant where humans excel.
Yeah, so it's an open problem. There's no provably correct answer. So you can't say the answer was supposed to be X. Is it X? You just have to say, is this answer right or not? So open problem, undefined workflow. So those are things like reviewing a legal contract for acceptability, right? It's a closed problem to go through and say, is this an indemnity clause? So you could have an agent scan it, find all the indemnity clauses and spit that out. But it's an open problem to say, do we accept this or not? Is this an acceptable indemnification clause? So open problems, undefined workflow are where humans excel. And I think that what we're going to do is just keep shoving work down into the people that can decide what the questions are. Is this a good answer? And then, okay, I got to determine a new workflow because this has never really been done before.
I think that's like, so engineers, right? Like we're not really thought of as like a creative profession, I would say, by the general public, but we are, right? And then I think the most among us, Dustin, like you included, like the creativity is a huge part of that because you're just kind of coming up with stuff, not quite out of thin air. It's based on your judgment, right? But the problem is like there's no workflow, there's no closed form solution. And I think you do a pretty good way of articulating it because when I try to explain people, I'm just like, no, just kind of do it.
Yeah. So I love Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I love that book. It talks a lot about mechanics feel in that. And there's mechanics feel applied to everything where you just like, if somebody who knows cars rides in your car, they'll just be like, hey, something's wrong with your front right tire, right? They just can hear it and they know. Engineers do that all the time. It's like, oh, you need to make this duct bigger because it's going to be too noisy. And like, well, how'd you know that? Like, because it's too small. I just know it is. It's just, the velocity is going to be too high. I can tell just by looking at it.
And I would think intuition with just reps, kind of like, and if you draw back to the parallel of like training data, well, us as humans, we've had so much training data on like that scenario. I can draw from my intuition and say, yeah, I just know because I've seen it enough times.
Yeah. And on undefined context. So models are really good if you can tell them these are the things that matter. But the world has billions of context points and you don't always have them in there. And it could be this client, the person we're presenting to, just hates PowerPoint. I just know that. So like that's not a data point you're tracking that the model is going to be able to reference, right? There's all these subtle things that humans are good at, just taking a billion contextual data points and drawing a conclusion.
Especially contextual data points that are not easily accessible by a computer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like in the world.
Like so we're in the structural restoration business, and I get a lot of questions about are they coming for our jobs and like in the field, and I'm like, well, that's probably the last place you should look because it's like take to computer vision. Like the computer knows what a crack is and knows what a spall is, great. But like there's a 30+ year engineer. How does this concrete smell? Like are there other telltale signs that like just like photos, photogrammetry, computer vision won't pick up on because it's just that's a different sensor.
Like if you've ever done just old school ML models, like you realize there's human judgment involved in what context you provide the thing. And I know we're scaling up and up and up and providing more and more context, but most of the things running in the world run on, 10 to 20 data points, and somebody decided what those are, and that excludes the other, 42 billion possible things that could have been influencing the outcome.
Well, talk to us more about that, right? Because I think you've written about this too. There's a certain piece of like under the judgment stack, there's curation because, and it's kind of Pareto in nature. I guess in the case of 10 over 42 billion is like almost 100 zero.
Yeah. So curation, so a good example, ask an LLM to do research for you on the internet, and it will come back with things, and those things represent something adjacent to what you talked about. But there's so much on the internet, it can't possibly return it all or curate it down to exactly the right things. So what becomes valuable is a person that you trust to do that work. That's why people follow newsletters or podcasts or whatever, because those people are good at curating things down in a way that resonates with you and provides you information. I haven't found a model that I trust to do that yet. So it doesn't mean that they're incapable of that. That means that's hard and it's uniquely human. And I don't even trust every human to do it. I bias towards certain humans that I think curate the things in a way that resonates with me. So
I love the topic of hallucination because, this is such a big thing. How these models are hallucinating. I'm like, have you ever talked to somebody who's a slick talker?
Yeah. Ever listen to any podcast?
Yeah. I mean, like I'm sitting all the time. So I'm sitting here ready.
Yeah. They're all
and I like to pick on the sales folks because, that's the used car salesman. But it's like, if you get somebody who just makes stuff up, right?
Yeah. They'll totally do that.
Yeah. I do it. Yeah. I do it too. Just hopefully in context where it doesn't really matter. It's funny.
Tech founders, that's like the model. Is fake it till you make it. Right? They're making stuff up all the time, and then they deliver on it on the back end. But that's not unique to LLMs. It's probably one of the things they're mimicking about the training data, making stuff up.
Well, and so here's things that so this next question is about bridging the gap between what technology can do and then what teams need in practice. And I'll just draw an example because before we got on this call, I gave like a 45-minute tutorial on Cowork to a few friends. Mm-hmm. And I was explaining that, like, if I have a WordPress website, that Cowork orchestrates the tool, which is the browser extension in Chrome, to make edits to the website on my behalf. Mm-hmm. It's very good at that because there is a ton of training data on how a WordPress site is assembled.
Yeah.
That's one end of the spectrum. And then the other end of the spectrum, I don't know, let's just say you're trying to use browser automation in a custom built like expense reporting software. It'll struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it doesn't have a lot of training data on that. And each individual user environment's different too. So like there's all these subtleties that have to be different per user. And you work that out when you have Cowork working on your behalf. But if I tried to use your Cowork on my machine, I'd have to do the tweaking again and do the training again.
Which is, right, which then I guess I gotta be careful about, right? Because that's all. And the other thing that the group didn't quite get until I just tried to explain it to them, which I think it hit is like, so Cowork, that's on, like it spins up a virtual machine on your computer. It's all local to your machine. If you go to another computer, log into the same account and a different Cowork instance, the two don't talk to each other.
Yeah. Yeah, it has to be a new machine. It's like a new virtual machine. And it destroys after you shut your thing down too. Like it spins up new every time.
And if you work with it long enough and you start seeing the errors about workspaces and then all the funny names it uses for like temporary file storage, which I think is kind of cute. But I think like being able to just explain, and by no means I'm like an expert, but being able to just explain it to like your fellow lay people in a way that they can use it, I think is part of bridging the gap. But what else do you have in mind, right? Because not everyone in your company is going to be spending as much time in these tools as like you or I might be.
Yeah, I know. That's a real issue. The training aspect of it is a real issue. And there's training of like here's what the buttons do, and then there's training. Here's how you use that in our business, and they're two different types of training. The second one's more like consulting. You have to understand the business to understand how to train on that. But let's say the first one, like, just talk about projects, cloud projects or Copilot Studio. You can build basically projects in there. You need someone in charge of saying, this is how we execute this process, and here are the templates we're going to manage to collect inputs and present outputs. Like, you need a steward of that. You can't just have that be crowdsourced and piled in by everybody, because there's no curation and it conflicts. And so that, I think, will catch a lot of businesses off guard, is the tool doesn't know your process, nor will it come up with a good approximation of your process. It's just going to do something, and then that's different every time. And then not only do you have human variance, now you have this tool putting probabilistic things on top of human variance, and it's just like not added value. You have to curate that aspect of it too.
And that curation piece, and just into my experience, like so building operational playbooks for specific roles.
Mm-hmm.
So the part that AI is really good at, right? If you interview someone, get that institutional knowledge out of their head,
right,
and you give it context, you start to be able to shift from the center of the bell curve towards the right tail.
Yeah, it raises the floor up on what you can do.
And it's and the talk about like the judgment part. So very good at like helping prep, recording, summarizing, and then if you can, as the human, add your own judgment layer and check to make sure it's legitimate, of course. That's really useful. But handing the keys over with none of this is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. So we have a couple. They're still kind of like proof of concept. Do we even want to use this for this kind of thing? Projects going right now. One of them's around like proposal generation, because I think that it will greatly benefit from having a person in charge of like position statements that we upload for context, and the interview format that we use. So we'll upload an RFP, have a person like a mechanical engineer is the expert in whatever the thing is, go through the process, answer the questions, talk about what they think the differentiators are, and then LLM will write text for those differentiators based on all the position papers and experience and stuff that a marketing person uploaded and managed. So it's really different than having the engineer go into Claude or ChatGPT or Copilot and write text that they send to a marketing person who puts in. Like, the voice is really different. The differentiators aren't controlled. Like that back end context management is a real thing.
And it only gets, and like, it's hard enough, right? As just an individual who says like, hey, I have my brand standards and my voice skill, and there's like me as a person, right? As like say you're just a solopreneur. Like, you are reflected throughout. That's hard enough.
Yeah. Right.
And how big are you guys? Like a couple thousand people? Or
1,200, 1,100 something.
So like, just to take the time to appreciate that, right? Because you have to do that for an entire organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't have a way, then you get free version of Grok, that somebody did and uploaded to your template. Like, okay.
And to segue into the next question. So you guys are providing tools and a controlled environment for people to use artificial intelligence. But that human aspect that we keep talking about is a recurring theme. Why is curiosity such a critical skill, particularly as this technology not only advances, right, but it's like, I feel like we're finally off this linear part of the curve, and it's just taken off.
Yeah, there's a couple reasons. One is, if you wait for it to be explained, what's getting explained to you is the fifth version in history, or it's old. So by the time there's good training and it's all agreed upon, it's old, and it's like you're behind. You're not pushing anything. The second version is it's hard. So all this stuff's hard, and you have to have curiosity to push through figuring it out, because it's not going to work for you, and it's going to make you feel dumb to begin with. And so you have to be curious enough to say, well, I'm probably not dumb. This is probably just hard, and I just need to keep after it, and I'll figure it out. And then I said, too, the third reason is, if you're not curious, you won't know what to do with it once somebody trains you, because you have to be able to come up with questions that are worth asking. It's not going to tell you that part.
And that curiosity mindset, you read business books, right? It's like, hey, like as long as you have the right mindset and attitude, we could teach you, which in the engineering space is definitely true, but there was always that requisite of like, you really needed to go to school, get your IT, get your P, right? But
Right.
I think like that curiosity and that mindset is so critical here, because like, I don't really want to start investing time in someone until I know that they have the right mindset to be able to accept what we're going to try to work on together.
Yeah. So the opposite is learned helplessness, right? And so that's a thing. If you're not very curious, once you hit any kind of barrier, you just go to the person and say, I'm stuck. And then you expect them to get you unstuck. And it's just a very immature way to approach work. If you're curious, you come and you say, hey, I've got these questions. Yeah, I'm trying to figure this out. Could you help me with these questions? It's not just like I'm throwing up my hands, I'm stuck.
Yeah. And then I think the question that many engineers and others in the industry are asking, how does AI reshape white collar roles in AEC? And then we've talked about this, but where does the human expertise remain essential?
So the short version of that is, unless Anthropic and ChatGPT, unless OpenAI and Anthropic want to take $5 trillion worth of liability, there's probably some liability aspect that separates human work from LLM work, right? So,
and not just like
business.
I was gonna say, not just $5 trillion of liability, like very, very, very tiny pockets distributed all over the world.
Yeah, not one thing either, like all the things
in the physical world, which
So figure out, most service businesses, you're getting paid to take responsibility if you're wrong. Like that's why there's money exchanging hands, because if there's no responsibility implied, like if your business just said, I might be wrong, you should check this yourself, people aren't going to be very interested in paying you for that. They're just going to guess, right? They're like, well, if I can guess, I don't need your opinion. I need you to stand behind your answer. So the main difference is, what does your insurance cover? What does your license expect you to take responsibility for? Those are the things where you should like really focus your efforts and say, well, if I'm taking responsibility for this, why am I able to do that? And then you back out from that. What you shouldn't do is start with, I'm valuable because I remove pain of doing work, right? Like the pain of doing work thing, the productivity piece is going to keep getting encroached on by AI. It's going to keep doing more and more work, make it less and less painful. So you don't want to be paid to remove the pain of doing the work. You want to be paid for the quality of your answer. And then you benefit from the productivity increases. You don't have to pass those on because your answer is worth paying for.
And Dustin, I think we've covered a lot today. And if I try to just put myself in the shoes of somebody who's not a lunatic like I am and spending hours and hours every day on this. If you're in a firm, what no matter what seat you're in, from owner to entry level engineer, if you're feeling overwhelmed by how rapidly this stuff is changing, what's a practical first step you can take to try to just keep up?
What I tell most people is to start with either Copilot or Claude or ChatGPT and find some language-based step in your work. So it's usually around contracts or proposals or narratives or something. Find some language-based step where the current workflow is a person takes a Word document off of the server, does work on it, puts the Word document back on the server. Find something like that. And then go to one of those LLM platforms and start to set up a process. It's called skills in Claude. That's the one I work in the most. But set up skills, set up templates, and start to push that process into being managed by an AI, not done by an AI. The worker's doing it, but they're being managed, and the template work is being done by the AI. That gets you thinking about, how do I transition my judgment into something that can be put into an agentic orchestrator? So it doesn't change the world. It's easy because it's word-based, there's language-based, and it was easy because you don't have to do storage. That's not your system of record. System of record's your file system. So you're just moving the work into the the platform to start to think about your judgment and how it interacts with the tools you use.
And I think proposals are a great way to start. Not every proposal, but it's right, like you said, it's text-based, and that workflow is relatively easy. And then probably the most important thing is if somebody signs it, that means money.
Yeah.
So there's incentive to, and that's, like when I work with people, that's like one of the first things is, well, if we can get more of these in the door, I have more time, resources, and effort that I can put towards innovation.
Yeah, right. So that's people, they confuse the starting point with the ending point. And so I'll talk about that as a starting point. And then they're like, okay, well, like, how does this scale? And I'm like, well, it doesn't. That scales like crap, right? It's cordoned off into these tools, and it's difficult to scale, but it helps you think about what you need to do so that when you either hire the consultant or hire the software developers or whatever to do this at scale later, you know what the questions are.
And so Dustin is absolutely one of my favorite talking points, because like whether it's knowledge management or proposal generation, or if you want to link up an MCP to Revit or CAD, right?
Yeah.
Like if you can just play in a safe environment for $20 to $200 a month and figure out what you want,
yeah,
you're going to learn a lot in the process and be better equipped when that expert does enter the room.
Yeah. You ask better questions, like what's kind of fluff and what's real. It helps you understand how that applies to your business, because you understand your business.
Yes. And
that's why you're running it.
And right, as much as I'd like to believe, right, like we're in AEC, we get it, right? We have our own very narrow lane of like our domain expertise, and AEC is, I'm going to go off the screen. I'm like, why is my computer screen? But that's why, like, there's no way for any one person to understand the scope of every single business under one umbrella.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
The last thing I tell people is don't expect somebody else to solve your long-term strategy problems. So it'll be hard to scale. You're going to have to pay if you want to scale it. It's not free efficiency. It should be efficient. You should have an ROI on it if you do it right, but it's not free, and it takes work and it takes time. It's hard.
And I'll make a note to send this to you afterward, but I did write an article. A friend of mine, same firm I was telling you about earlier. So his way of, accounting for that increase in token consumptions is billing the time his agents spend.
Yeah.
So that's right. It's just one way of recouping the cost. It's not the only way.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to have to rethink what value is.
Models. Yes.
Yeah.
But Dustin, thank you again so much for taking the time to join us today. Best way for the audience to connect with you if they want to ask any follow-up questions.
Probably LinkedIn is the best way. And then I am pretty active on Substack. But if you connect with me on LinkedIn or comment on one of my posts or send me a message, I'm on there a lot, and I'll reply. I like talking to people about this stuff.
Yeah, and speaking from experience, Dustin is awesome to get to know and interact with. But we'll leave it there, Dustin. Thank you again so much for your time. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, thanks for letting me do this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Please remember, you can find the show notes for this episode at aectechpodcast.com. There, you'll find a summary of the key points discussed in today's episode, as well as links to any of the resources, websites, or books mentioned during this episode. Until next time, I wish you the best in all your engineering and technology endeavors.